says to you, I don't know what I'd do without you. And something in you, even if you are exhausted, even if you're annoyed because of how much you've been giving, feels good. Like really good. Because you're needed. You're the one that people notice, makes things go really well. You're good at this role. And people notice it. And then an hour later, a day later, maybe a week later, you're back to feeling really exhausted. So something sharp slips out, a comment with an edge to it, a tone that surprises you, a shutdown, a silence, a version of yourself you don't love, maybe a passive-aggressive comment. And then comes the guilt, that scrutinizing, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. So what do? You give more. You make it better. You show up bigger. You offer a lot. And for a period of time, it works. You feel like yourself again, and everything feels okay again. And then the cycle starts over. If you recognize yourself in this, then stay tuned. A lot of the clients that I work with do, and I want to talk about this some more. This pattern has a name. I call it the people pleaser's burnout loop. It's a very human system that learned somewhere along the way that giving was how you stayed safe, connected, and valued. The problem isn't that the loop is irrational, it's that it costs you more than it gives you. And by the time most of my clients realize this, they are just spent and really stuck. So the really important thing to know is that overgiving has a real payoff, and that's why it's so hard to stop the cycle. People pleasing often feels really good. There's a lot of short-term moments of positive reinforcement. When someone says, gosh, you're the best thing that happened to my son, or we don't know what we would do without you, that lands somewhere real. You're in a role that you gotta play. You are competent, needed, you are praised, and that's where you feel like you can thrive. That's not nothing. That is a genuine reward. And what I often tell my clients is, you can't just decide to stop doing something that works. Not completely, not all at once. The overgiving is actually a very effective short-term strategy for feeling connected and valued. The cost shows up later in the depletion, the resentment, the burnout that creeps in so slowly you barely notice it until you're just completely running on empty. The second important thing to know is that resentment is information. It's not you being a bad, nasty person. That sharp comment that slipped out, the passive-aggressive tone, shutdown, the silence treatment even, that resentment has been building somewhere with nowhere to go. Oftentimes, many people pleasers don't express their needs directly because it doesn't feel safe or allowed. It often feels like it's too much for them to ask something of someone directly. So the resentment doesn't come out cleanly, it leaks out sideways, and then comes the guilt. Why did I say that? That's not who I am. I feel so bad. And the guilt sends you straight back into overgiving to repair the relationship and feel like yourself again. The resentment was information. It was your body saying, something here is out of balance, but instead of listening to it, most of us manage it back down so fast, and then the loop continues again. The third thing that's really important is that this is a nervous system pattern. This isn't just a personality flaw or pattern. Your nervous system learned probably somewhere along the way, a long time ago, that being helpful, agreeable, and needed was, again, it was how you stayed safe and connected. It was protective. And that response got reinforced over and over again until it became automatic and also a part of your identity. Which is also why just deciding, I'm just going to stop doing this, doesn't work. You can't think your way out of a pattern that lives in your body. The awareness helps, but awareness alone isn't enough to interrupt something that moves this fast and this automatically. So I want to be honest that the loop didn't stop the moment I understood it. It was the beginning. But the pattern had years of momentum behind it. What actually shifted was when I stopped treating it as a character flaw and started getting curious about it instead. What was the resentment telling me? What did I actually need in that moment that I didn't ask for? What would it mean to let the guilt be there without immediately acting on it? Those questions, they didn't break the loop overnight, but they created something, a small gap between the feeling and that automatic response of making things better and overgiving. And that gap is where things slowly start to change. So there are 3 places you can enter the loop and begin to interrupt it. This, I just want to remind you, is not a fast changing strategy, but little by little over time, it really helps. So the first is to notice what's happening without judgment. When that resentful comment slips out, instead of going straight into guilt and judgment towards yourself, pause and just name it internally. That's the beginning of the loop, or that's the resentment. That tiny moment of recognition without any self-criticism is where the change starts. The second is get curious about the resentment. Instead of wanting to squash it down and make it all better, ask yourself, what did I actually need in that moment that I didn't ask for? Remember, resentment is information and data, so it's really worth slowing down and listening to it. The third is meeting the guilt with compassion instead of action. The guilt is what drives you back into overgiving, and I get it feels intolerable, and we tend to want to get ourselves quickly out of that sensation. However, when you can sit with the guilt, acknowledge it, maybe even remind yourself that the guilt isn't an indication that you did something wrong, but that you're really doing something that's unfamiliar, which is being curious about what your unmet needs are. You can be more kind to yourself about it. This will maybe slow you down from overgiving, making it go away. The loop has somewhere different to go. It's a pivot, and that's a circuit breaker. So in these small moments of practice, when you catch it a little sooner, when you get a little more curious about what you actually needed, and when you're a little kinder to yourself after the guilt shows up, that's the beginning of the work, and it's very doable. I'm Nicole. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and this is exactly the pattern I work with, both in the therapy room and honestly in my own life too. If you were nodding your head being like, this is me, I'd love to have you back next week, and I'll see you then.